And I don't have anything very formal prepared. What I want to do is actually show you how to create one. And you may want to follow along and create your own Kahoot. I'm going to share a screen here, and I am going to open up, well, to bring over my Kahoot account. I have a paid account, and I because I was using it in a class with, 280 some students. And I've actually had a paid account for a while. So I have to remember what the differences are. I'm not positive. I meant to look those up, but it's been just kind of crazy. But all you do, and the free account gives you a lot of basic tools. And I think everything we're going to demonstrate can work with a free account. I think there's some limitations on the number of Kahoots you can create or the number of participants, but I'm not positive. And I see there's something in chat. Okay, so Nick has put in some other things: Bookcat, quizzes, and Gimkit, which gives you power up or money or something that you can also steal points or sabotage your whole group or swap places and so forth. So it adds a little bit more gamification. I've been pretty pleased with it.
Oh, sorry, John.
Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, I was just going to say that the money and the power ups and the steal points, the idea is that even if you're not in the top, 3 or 5, you're still in the game, right? And that you can earn, there's an element of randomness. So you might come out as the winner. So it helps keep those lower in the pack students engaged. I haven't played them, but my wife's a high school biology teacher, and they seem to be in vogue in high school right now.
And that's a good factor. If you're using groups and persistent groups, it's a way of doing it. Or even if you're doing it with individuals, giving students a chance to climb back up might be helpful. Mine have all been pretty much anonymous. I mean, you can set it up so you can keep track of students and so forth. I've used it primarily for retrieval practice, and students have just found it to be a fun activity. So what you do is you just go to Kahoot. I believe this is a website that you use to sign up for it. I'll put that in the chat, and I think that's correct. It might even be just kahoot.it, or if you type kahoot.it, it will get you there. You can create an account, create a free account, and I'll just take you through the steps of creating a Kahoot. So you first click on create, create here. This was when I had to create it for another workshop. We'll create one, and there's a lot of tools. Some of these are with the paid account, but you can create a new Kahoot, which anyone can do, and you just add questions to it. So by default, it's a single choice, single select question. And you could also have multiple select where there's where there's more than one option. So those are like the check boxes rather than the radio button. So students have to select all the correct answers to get full credit. They get partial credit for each one they correct. If you just want to do a simple multiple choice, just leave it at single select. You could upload an image. You could put in a video as the question, as the format building into it, or whatever. Or you could just type a question right here. So, and you notice there is math typing available. There's functional things. There's a math equation editor, which gives you, at least some basic math tools. So it looks very much like a sort of a basic, perhaps LaTeX editor or a tech editor. My guess is they're probably using LaTeX, but I'm not positive on that. But you can put math equations in there, and I use that pretty regularly in my classes where we do use more math. So I'm just going to create a simple question. So this is a sample question this is a part that will display. And then you could add images, or you could put, I'm just going to be really not creative because it's been a rough day and a rough week and a rough year for all of us. And then you have to have at least 2 answers with multiple choice. You could have more. I'll put in the extra effort and put in answer 3 and answer 4. And then you just click done. And that has created this question, and it's checking it to make sure it's okay. And then I'm going to go back to edit. And then I could add a new question to this, or I can use a question bank with past questions and things I created. But so I'll add one more question, and this time it's going to be each question. You could be a quiz. It could be a true false. It could be something where students have to type in their response, or it could be a poll where you get students to choose from options. Oh, and on that last one, I didn't choose the correct answer. So you have to select answer one turned out to be correct, by the way, on that last one. And then now actually, I can add a new question, and I didn't need to
Hey,
click
John.
the done. Yes.
So where did you, before you submitted it, how did you know what the answer is? Where do you put that in as the correct
Okay.
answer before you submit it?
Exactly. And I should have done that before. It's just checking this little box,
Oh,
this
okay.
circle. So if answer two is correct, you click that. But now it automatically switched to multiple select since I put in two answers. So so I'm going to go back to single select and uncheck one of them. There we go. So yeah, so that's how you do it. And then I I should have only clicked done when I was done with the whole test, but I'm going to add another question. This time I'll make it true false, and I'm just going to put in the question here. Is this true? And the answer is yes, it is. And so you just click it as the answer. And now we're going to actually play that just to see how it works. And when you do that, you notice, by the way, for each of the questions, there's a default time. And that's how long it will play. It will either play until all the participants have finished. No, we do not have an upgraded Kahoot edu account through Oswego. A lot of high schools have it. Some colleges do, but we don't. So there we go. And you can change the time. So if you're giving students a much more challenging question that requires them to do more calculations, give them more time. The default time of 20 seconds tends to work pretty well. What will happen, though, is it will end sooner if everyone selects an answer. So let's actually try one here. I'm going to, you could preview it and test it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit from this quiz. Oh, I have to put in a title for it. So let me just call this one a demo. And because I don't want to actually ever try to use that actual quiz. I just wanted to demonstrate how easy it was to create questions. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to say this one's done, and you can play it, but I'm going to, oh, the correct answer wasn't, I swore I selected that, but I guess I didn't. So now I'm done. Okay, it's validating, make sure everyone has a correct answer. And I'm going to just say done. We don't really need to test that one because that's probably not the more fun one. So I think the best way to do this is actually to pick one that I put together for an earlier workshop just to show how it could be used. I'm just going to go back to my Kahoots and come on, here we go. I've used this for a number of things, including on the day before an exam, I have put together some review questions that aren't the same as the exam questions, but here we go. This is one I put together for a past workshop for faculty. So let's just try it to see what it's like from the student side. And this is going to be, you can either assign it for self-paced learning, so students could do it on their own, or you could do it right in the classroom, which if you're doing it synchronously is probably the more fun way of doing it. So you choose the teach option. And what will happen is it's loading it. You can either do player versus player with one person per Kahoot, or the team versus team. There's other options you can set. You can set it where they get to practice it later. You can turn that on. We can do that. One thing I strongly recommend is that you turn on the friendly nickname generator if you're going to use it with students, because students will pick names that they try to make as at least reasonably offensive in a way that won't get them in trouble, or they hope won't get them in trouble. Don't give them the opportunity. Let it generate the own nicknames. Maybe with upper level classmen, but certainly not with a class of 288 freshmen. You don't want to do this. I did try that once, and I will never, ever do it again. You can randomize the order of the questions and the answers, and we don't really need to go through all that, the advanced tools. I'm just going to go with the classic option here. And what it's going to do is load a game pin. Now, students will generally load this on the computer, but what you can do is you go to the game pin. I should know this. I think you just go to Kahoot. How do you play this? I thought it was going to generate a URL to give you, but it doesn't. I'm sorry, I need more sleep. But let's just type play Kahoot here, and it will give you a website, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, here we go. Kahoot.it. Go right to there. Actually, so go there and use the game pen that was just displayed. Let me get back to it when I grab the right mouse, not for the other room. And type in the number when you go to that website, 615-791, and it will show you joining. It'll all be anonymous because that's how I generally have used it in my classes, just as a nice way of providing some fun retrieval practice. So we now have one person has joined, and you see it's creating names, which always involves an adjective and a noun. And it generates thousands of possible variations on that. And once you have everyone joined, and you can see the number of people joining there on the side. We've got 9 people joined of 12 people in the room. You don't all have to join, but it's kind of fun to do. Because I think the best way to see how this works is actually to try it. Okay. And what will happen sometimes is you'll see people dropping in and out if they don't like their name. What I normally would tell my students is, we're going to start now, so don't exit because you can enter once it starts. And we're going to start right now. Okay, so it's going to call up the first question from this quiz, and it's going to give a countdown. And here we go. And now it will show the answer, how many people have answered. I hope these are all correct. I put these together really quickly back last May, and I haven't looked at them again. There may have been problems. I think Nick actually was there last time. So if there's mistakes, I'm sorry. Okay, so here what we found is that the 4 people picked each answer. But not everyone answered then. Okay, but the time ran out. So the answer, in fact, is true, that when you engage in space practice, people tend to remember things more deeply. It didn't show up on your screen? Okay, well, it should on the next time with the game pin. So we can see it gives you more points if you answer quickly. So Clever Sloth answered it quickly first and got their correct answer. These were all taken from the Neuromyths thing that Michelle Miller and a few other people did with a study of faculty instructional designers and campus administrators to identify some of the most common myths that people had about teaching and learning. Okay, and as we can see, these are common myths. That differentiated instruction is not really the same thing as individual instruction, which is one of the reasons we wanted Michelle we were going to do a reading group with Michelle on that. Having different instruction for different people is not necessarily the same thing as individualized. Individualized instruction is where you have something unique to each individual based on their own needs, their own background, and so forth. Adaptive learning techniques can provide individual instructions, tutoring can, but just having differentiated instruction based on testing is not quite the same. Okay, in any case, Clever Sloth is doing well, and we'll do another one. Now, I don't want to interrupt. Experts and novices approach problems essentially the same way. That is false, because experts activate different areas of the brain that people. Susan, are you getting the questions now, by the way?
The problem I'm having is different screens, so I can't see the question and the answers. It's just, I got to figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing the question on your screen, but I can answer on my screen, but I'm not seeing the
Right.
question.
I'm not seeing questions either.
Okay. Oh, you need to open up a separate window or use a mobile device. What virtually all my students did is they installed the app. It comes up on your phone in a nice compact display, and then they get the big colored buttons and can click on that. So yeah, so
That makes sense.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now they can open another window and they could hear me speaking and switch to the other window, because you don't have to. They could watch my screen, but they won't be able to see the answers unless they open up the other tab. So normally I just tell them to listen in, and the way I do it is as a review. I'd stop at each question. I'd let them explain why they picked it. We'd go through it. I'd correct any misperceptions, but they're having fun doing it in ways they might not, if it was a test. And it's a great way to do some review. Okay, so we'll just do a couple more just to see. Okay. And it helps when everyone can see, or when more people can see the correct answer. Space practice does help increase learning. And there we get the results. And Clever Sloth is still in the lead here. Okay. People are doing better. Good. Okay. And, we could just continue this, but I think that probably illustrates the main aspects of it. What I'm going to do now is just end the game. And I think it will give me the same thing that will happen when we get to the end. It will give you the totals and it shows who did the best. And students get really excited if they're up in the leaderboard, and it gives you the top three scores. And it makes them feel good if they're up there. But again, because I do it anonymously and I'm not keeping track of grades, they found it just to be a fun way of practicing and doing some review. Nick, were you the person who was having students submit questions to Kahoot, or was that?
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd mentioned that. As part of a study tool for a test, I had students, if they wanted to participate in an extra credit assignment. You'll know, like when you create a Kahoot, there's an option to download an Excel spreadsheet where you can easily import many questions at once. And so all I did was just take that format and put it onto a Google Sheet, where I gave students access to editing that sheet. And I said, you could put in X number of multiple choice or true false questions into that sheet, and I'd give you extra credit on homework with that. And I would use, 3 or 4, depending on how many questions were actually put into the Excel spreadsheet. I use 3 or 4 of them on the exam. So it's a study tool for them.
Yeah. And another strategy is just to have students create their own and share them with the class. And Nick has shared the spreadsheet to do that. You could also do it as a form where students submit things through a form, and you could set the length of the fields to match the lengths here. That gets a little trickier if they're doing images, but I think you may have to manually insert those when you import it. I'm not positive on whether it would import an image from the form.
I've never done the images, but I do. If you're on the link that I just sent, you can scroll over to the right, and there's some logic that I use to let the students know if they did meet the characters, that the character limits on the questions. So, and they just got a simple green cell or red cell if they met the character lengths. So I think it's like in columns G or columns H through L. So that's
okay.
Their feedback.
Okay, nice. And that way they can see if they made a mistake and redo it. Excellent.
Yeah, my experience this semester though is I didn't use a rubric this semester, and well, I haven't used a rubric in any semester, but the quality of some of them weren't that good this semester. So I'm gonna give them a simple little rubric for whether or not they'll get the extra credit.
You saw them.
Another thing that faculty sometimes have done is let groups of students or individual students create their Kahoots and just run them for the class, because that could be a nice way of getting students to reflect on what was important. So, and, to see how they do compared to others, when other people create those. Michelle Miller told a story, I think it was in one of our podcasts with her, where she had students doing that as a review activity, but she let students create the Kahoots and run them in class. And she was delayed getting to class because of something that came up, an emergency. And she got there and the students had already started playing the Kahoot. She was only like a minute or so late, but they were so excited about doing it. They just took over and started running them. So it's a fun activity and it works really nicely online. Again, as long as students have a device where they can either switch to it. I had a number of students connecting only through the smartphone. They'd have Zoom open on the smartphone, and then they just open another instance for Kahoot, and they just flip back and forth between them. They got pretty good at that by the end of the term. It was a challenge, but pretty much all smartphones would allow you to do that. So, any questions? Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. Thanks. It's fun. It gets some retrieval practice, and retrieval practice, all the research shows for over a century, is a most effective way of learning. And we do have this Circle In app coming up this summer, which helps students also study together and form community. And that'll be there on Friday. But students can also use this for their own fun. They could, if they're studying in groups, they could create Kahoots and run them.
That's cool.
Any questions? It's nice when students really enjoy an activity, especially if it's an ungraded activity that, because often we think that students do need incentives, but this is something they just have fun with. And if you do this very often, the music might seem to get annoying to you. It doesn't seem to get annoying to students in the same way. You have some choices of music, or at least with a paid account, but is part of the whole experience. And many of them have used Kahoot at some point in K through 12. So it's not something that's new to them. And, especially for freshmen, that familiarity is a kind of a nice thing right now. Okay, I'll stop the recording and stop the sharing.